This is my house. What are you doing here, lady?
The key turned in the lock of the countryside mansion, and billionaire Alexander Hayes pushed open the heavy oak door, expecting silence and dust. Instead, he heard laughter, children's laughter. His heart stopped as he stepped into his private retreat, the one place in the world that was supposed to be empty, locked, untouched. The sound of small feet running across hardwood floors echoed from upstairs. A woman's voice called out, warm and musical, "Careful on those stairs, babies." Alexander stood frozen in his own entryway, his designer luggage still in hand, as a little girl, no more than 5 years old, came barreling around the corner. She skidded to a stop when she saw him, her brown eyes going wide. "Mama!" she screamed. "There's a man in our house." Within seconds, a young black woman appeared at the top of the stairs, two more children clinging to her sides, a boy about 7 and another girl, maybe 3 years old. She was beautiful in a natural, unpolished way, wearing simple jeans and a faded t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. But it was her expression that stopped Alexander cold. Not fear, not guilt. Pure, fierce protectiveness as she positioned herself between him and the children. "Who are you?" she demanded. "And what are you doing in my home?" Alexander's brain short-circuited. Her home? This was his property, his sanctuary, the countryside estate he'd inherited from his grandmother 5 years ago, and visited maybe twice. "I think you're confused," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "This is my house. I'm Alexander Hayes, and I own this property. The real question is, what are you doing here, and how did you get in?" The woman's face changed, confusion replacing the protective anger. Behind her, the three children huddled together, sensing the tension. "That's impossible," she said slowly. "I've lived here for 3 years. I have papers. I have a lease. This is my home." And that's when Alexander realized something was terribly, impossibly wrong. Either this woman was a very convincing liar, or someone had been playing a dangerous game with both of their lives. 3 months earlier, Alexander Hayes sat in his Manhattan penthouse, staring at the divorce papers his lawyer had just delivered. His wife of 8 years, ex-wife, now had taken half of everything. The apartment in Paris, the beach house in Miami, $40 million in cash, and custody of their dog. She'd wanted more, but Alexander's lawyers had fought hard. What she hadn't known about was the countryside property in upstate New York. The old estate his grandmother had left him, tucked away in a small town called Riverside, 3 hours north of the city. Alexander had kept it secret during the divorce proceedings, hidden under a trust his ex-wife's lawyers never discovered. It was his insurance policy, his escape plan. Now, burned out from the divorce, exhausted from running his tech empire, and desperate for peace, Alexander had decided to take his first real vacation in a decade. 2 weeks away from board meetings and business deals. 2 weeks to figure out who he was without his company, without his marriage, without the constant pressure. He'd called his property manager, Walter, a week ago, to have the house prepared. "The Riverside estate, sir?" Walter had sounded surprised. "You haven't been there in years." "I know. Just make sure it's clean, stocked with food, and ready for a long stay. I'm leaving the city for a while." "Of course, sir. I'll handle everything personally." But Walter hadn't handled anything. He'd died of a heart attack 2 days after that phone call, something Alexander only learned when Walter's daughter contacted him about funeral arrangements. In the chaos of condolences and finding a replacement property manager, Alexander had assumed Walter had already arranged the Riverside house before his death. He'd assumed wrong. Now, standing in what should have been his empty vacation home, facing a woman who claimed to live here with 3 children, Alexander felt his carefully controlled world tilting sideways. "Show me these papers," he said, his voice cold. "This lease you claim to have." The woman, she still hadn't given her name, studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Kids, go to your room." "But Mama," the oldest boy started. "Now, Brandon, take your sisters. Don't come out until I call you." The children obeyed, casting fearful glances at Alexander as they disappeared down the hallway. Once they were gone, the woman descended the stairs slowly, her posture cautious but not submissive. She pulled a folder from a drawer in the hallway table and handed it to him. Alexander opened it. Inside was a lease agreement, signed and notarized, for this exact property. The landlord's signature was illegible, but the property address was correct. Monthly rent, $1,200. Lease term, 3 years, with an option to renew. The tenant's name, Grace Mitchell. Grace, Alexander said, looking up at her. That's you? That's me. And you're really Alexander Hayes, the tech billionaire? I am. And I really do own this house. My grandmother, Margaret Hayes, left it to me when she died 5 years ago. Grace's face went pale. Margaret Hayes, she whispered. Oh God. You knew my grandmother? No. But the man who leased me this house, he said, his name was Michael Hayes. He said he was Margaret Hayes' son, that he'd inherited the property but didn't want to live here, so he was renting it out. Alexander's blood ran cold. His uncle, Michael Hayes. His grandmother's alcoholic, gambling-addicted son, who'd been written out of her will years ago because he'd stolen from her repeatedly. Michael had gotten nothing when Margaret died. Alexander had inherited everything because he was her favorite grandchild, the only family member who'd visited her, who'd cared. But if Michael had forged documents, posed as the owner, and illegally leased out Alexander's property, he scammed you, Alexander said flatly. My uncle is a con artist. He had no right to lease this house because he doesn't own it. Which means your lease is worthless. Grace sank onto the bottom step of the staircase, her face in her hands. No. 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 I paid him. I paid first month, last month, and a security deposit. $4,500. That was everything I had saved. And he took it knowing he had no legal right to rent you this house. I've been living here for 3 years, Grace said, her voice breaking. I have kids. I have a job in town. My children go to school here. This is our home. It's my house, Alexander said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. He was angry, yes, furious at his uncle for creating this mess. But looking at this woman, this single mother who'd been swindled, he felt something else too, pity. And grudging respect for how fiercely she'd protected her children. Grace looked up at him, tears in her eyes, but her jaw set. What happens now? Are you calling the police? Evicting us tonight? Alexander ran his hand through his hair, his mind racing. He'd come here for peace, for solitude, for escape. Instead, he'd walked into a legal nightmare. He could call the police, have Grace and her children removed. But they were victims too. And throwing a single mother and 3 kids onto the street wasn't who he wanted to be. Tell me your story, he said instead, surprising himself. All of it. How you ended up here. Why you needed this house. Everything. Grace studied him warily. Why? Because I need to understand what I'm dealing with before I decide what to do next. So Grace told him. She spoke about her ex-husband, Austin, who'd been charming and loving until the day after their wedding, when his true nature emerged. Controlling, violent, dangerous. She'd tried to leave multiple times, but he'd always found her, always dragged her back. When she got pregnant with Brandon, she'd hoped fatherhood would change him. Instead, Austin became worse, paranoid that the children would take her attention away from him. After their 3rd child, little Zoe, was born, Austin had hit Grace so hard he'd broken her jaw. She'd woken up in the hospital with her sister beside her, begging her to finally leave for good. I knew he'd kill me if I stayed, Grace said quietly, or hurt the kids to punish me, so I took them and ran. Changed our names legally. I became Grace Mitchell, my maiden name. The kids became Mitchells too. We moved 5 times in 2 years, always looking over our shoulders. And then you found this house, Alexander said. I found a listing online. Remote property, small town, affordable rent. It seemed perfect. Michael Hayes, your uncle, seemed legitimate. He had paperwork, keys, everything. He said the owner lived abroad and never visited. Said we could live here as long as we wanted, that it was a safe place for families. Did he know you were running from your ex-husband? Grace hesitated, then nodded. I told him I needed somewhere off the grid. He said this was perfect. Now I think he targeted me specifically because he knew I wouldn't ask too many questions, wouldn't look too closely at the documents. Alexander felt a surge of rage at his uncle. Michael hadn't just committed fraud, he'd preyed on a vulnerable woman fleeing domestic violence. Is your ex-husband still looking for you? Alexander asked. I don't know, I haven't heard from him in 3 years. But Austin's not the type to give up. He's obsessive, controlling. If he found us, Grace's voice trailed off, but the fear in her eyes said everything. They sat in silence for a moment. Alexander's vacation had officially become complicated. He could still evict her, still reclaim his house. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way Grace had immediately put herself between him and the children. Maybe it was knowing his grandmother would have helped this woman. Margaret Hayes had been kind, generous, always standing up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. "Here's what we're going to do," Alexander said finally. "You and your kids can stay. For now. We'll figure out the legal situation. Go after my uncle for the money he stole from you. And, I can't afford to pay you rent," Grace interrupted. "Not what this place is worth. I make $11 an hour at the diner in town. I barely scrape by as it is. I'm not asking you to pay rent. I'm saying we need time to figure this out properly. My lawyers will need to review everything, track down my uncle, fix this mess. That'll take weeks, maybe months. In the meantime, you're not homeless, and I'm not a man who throws children out of their home." Grace stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "You're serious? You'd let us stay?" "I am serious. But I'm also staying. This is still my house, and I came here for a vacation. So we'll be roommates. Temporary, strange, unexpected roommates. That's crazy. The whole situation is crazy. Might as well embrace it." For the first time since Alexander had arrived, Grace smiled. Just a small one, cautious and uncertain, but real. "Okay, we can try this. But ground rules. My kids' safety comes first, always. If I think for 1 second you're a danger to them." "I'm not," Alexander said firmly. "I'm a lot of things, but I'm not that." Grace nodded slowly. "Okay, then welcome to your house, Alexander Hayes." "Thank you for not having me arrested for breaking into my own home," Alexander replied dryly. The tension broke slightly. Grace stood up. "I should explain to the kids what's happening. They're probably terrified. Tell them I'm a friend, that there was a misunderstanding about the house, but we're working it out." Grace headed upstairs, leaving Alexander alone in the entryway. He looked around his grandmother's house, the house he'd inherited, but never really claimed. The furniture was different, more lived in. There were children's drawings on the refrigerator, visible through the kitchen doorway. A woman's sweater, draped over the couch. Signs of life. Of family. Of home. This was supposed to be his escape. Instead, it was becoming something else entirely. Upstairs, he heard Grace's gentle voice, explaining the situation to her children, Brandon's higher voice, asking questions. The little girls crying, but calming down. Grace reassuring them, promising they were safe. Alexander walked to the window and looked out at the countryside. Rolling hills, dense woods, peace and quiet. He'd wanted solitude. Instead, he'd gotten a single mother with 3 kids, a criminal uncle to hunt down, and a situation so complicated his lawyers would have panic attacks. But as he stood there, listening to Grace comfort her children, something unexpected happened. The tight knot of stress in Alexander's chest loosened slightly. For the first time since his divorce, since his wife had left, since his perfectly controlled life had fallen apart, Alexander felt something other than anger and exhaustion. He felt curious, interested, maybe even hopeful. Grace came back downstairs 20 minutes later. "They're okay. Confused, but okay. I told them you're staying for a little while, that we're all going to figure things out together." "How did they take it?" Zoe asked if you're a prince because you're rich. Brandon wants to know if you have any video games. And Lily, the middle one, asked if you like pancakes because that's what we're having for breakfast tomorrow. Alexander found himself smiling. "I do like pancakes." "Good, because we're a package deal. You get me and 3 kids who ask a million questions, make a lot of noise, and will probably drive you crazy within a week. I run a billion-dollar company. I can handle 3 children." Grace laughed. Actually laughed. Famous last words. They stood there awkwardly, 2 strangers bound together by an impossible situation. Finally, Grace cleared her throat. "I should show you your room. Or I guess I should show you which room is yours, since technically all the rooms are yours. Whichever one is free. I don't want to displace anyone. There's a guest room on the 1st floor. It's small, but it has its own bathroom. Will that work for a billionaire? It'll work for a very tired man who just wants to sleep. Grace led him to a small but comfortable room at the back of the house. It had clearly been used for storage boxes stacked in the corner, off-season clothes hanging in the closet. But there was a bed, a nightstand, a lamp. It was fine. I'll clear this stuff out tomorrow, Grace said apologetically. I wasn't exactly expecting a roommate. Neither was I. We're even. Grace lingered in the doorway. Alexander? Thank you. For not calling the cops, for not throwing us out. I know this is your house, you're right. But my kids, they've been through so much, having to leave here, start over again, it would break them. We'll figure it out, Alexander said, meaning it. I'm good at solving problems. That's what I do. Solving billion-dollar business problems is different from solving my mess. A problem is a problem. They all have solutions. Grace smiled, that same cautious smile. You're either really optimistic or really naive. Maybe both. After Grace left, Alexander unpacked his bags and sat on the edge of the bed. His phone buzzed, 17 missed calls from his assistant, 12 texts from board members, 6 emails marked urgent. His entire life in Manhattan pulling at him, demanding his attention. Alexander turned off his phone. Tomorrow, he'd deal with lawyers and legalities. He'd hunt down his uncle and make him pay for scamming Grace. He'd figure out the impossible logistics of sharing a house with a single mother and 3 children. But tonight, Alexander Hayes, billionaire, CEO, recently divorced workaholic, was just a man in a quiet house in the countryside, listening to the sound of children settling down for bed upstairs and a woman humming softly in the kitchen. It wasn't the vacation he'd planned. But maybe, just maybe, it was exactly what he needed. The next morning, Alexander woke to chaos. Children shouting, footsteps thundering overhead, the smell of something burning. He stumbled out of bed, disoriented, following the noise to the kitchen. Grace stood at the stove, spatula in hand, flipping pancakes while simultaneously refereeing an argument between Brandon and Lily about whose turn it was to set the table. Zoe sat in a booster seat at the table, syrup already smeared across her face, despite breakfast not being served yet. Good morning, Grace said, barely glancing at him. Coffee's ready. Kids, say good morning to Mr. Hayes. Morning, Brandon mumbled. Hi, Lily whispered shyly. Zoe just stared at him with huge eyes, then declared, You're really tall. Zoe, manners, Grace chided gently. Alexander poured himself coffee, watching this domestic scene unfold. It was so far from his normal mornings, quiet, efficient, solitary, that he felt like he'd walked into another dimension. Can I help? He asked. Grace looked at him, surprised. You cook? I can flip pancakes without burning them, if that helps. Grace handed him the spatula. Then you're officially on pancake duty. I need to break up World War III over table-setting duties. For the next 20 minutes, Alexander Hayes, man who'd built a tech empire, who negotiated billion-dollar deals, who'd been featured in Forbes, stood at a stove making pancakes for 3 children while their mother mediated disputes and wiped syrup off faces. It was absurd, surreal, and strangely wonderful. They sat down to eat together, the children gradually warming up to Alexander's presence. Brandon asked about his job. I make software that helps computers talk to each other. That's boring. Very boring. Lily asked if he had kids. No, just me. Zoe asked if he could make pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. I can try. Grace watched these interactions carefully, protective but allowing her children to be curious. Alexander could see her evaluating him with every answer, every gesture, making sure he was safe for her family. After breakfast, Brandon looked at Alexander seriously. Do you have video games? Not here. I wasn't planning to play games on this trip. What were you planning to do? Good question. What had he planned? Rest. Think. Figure some things out. That's boring too, Brandon announced. You need better plans. Brandon, Grace warned, but Alexander laughed. You're right. My plans were boring. What do you suggest? Brandon's face lit up. There's a creek behind the house. We could look for frogs. Or build a fort in the woods. Or, how about we start with cleaning up breakfast? Grace interrupted. Then Mr. Hayes probably has work to do. Actually, Alexander said, surprising himself again. Frog hunting sounds good. I haven't done that since I was Brandon's age. The children exploded with excitement. Grace looked shocked. You don't have to. I want to. I came here to remember what life is like outside boardrooms and business deals. Might as well start with frogs. 2 hours later, Alexander found himself waist-deep in a creek with 3 children, catching frogs and laughing harder than he had in years. His expensive watch was soaked. His designer jeans were muddy. He probably had a leech somewhere. He'd never been happier. Grace watched from the bank, a smile on her face. When Alexander looked up and caught her eye, something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or the beginning of trust. That's when Alexander's phone rang. He turned it back on, and now his assistant's name flashed on the screen. Reality intruding on this strange, perfect moment. I have to take this, he said apologetically. Go ahead, kids, time to head back anyway. Alexander walked away from the creek, answering the call. Jessica, what's wrong? What's wrong? His assistant said, her voice sharp with stress. You've been unreachable for 12 hours. The board is panicking. And Mr. Hayes, your uncle, contacted the office. He's demanding to speak with you immediately. Alexander's blood ran cold. Michael. His uncle somehow knew Alexander had discovered the scam, which meant Michael might also know Alexander had found Grace. What did he want? He wouldn't say. But Alexander, he sounded threatening. Should I call security? No. Forward me his contact information. I'll handle it. There's something else, Jessica said hesitantly. Someone's been asking questions about the Riverside property, a private investigator. He came to the office yesterday, flashing a photo of a woman and 3 kids, asking if we knew anything about them. Alexander's heart stopped. What woman? He didn't say. But Alexander, whoever's looking for them, seemed serious and dangerous. Alexander turned to look at Grace, who was helping Zoe out of the creek, laughing as her youngest daughter splashed water everywhere. Brandon was showing Lily a frog. It was such a normal, beautiful family moment. And somewhere out there, someone was hunting them. Alexander's vacation had just become a mission. He had to protect this family, had to figure out who was looking for them and why, had to stop both his criminal uncle and whoever else was circling. Because looking at Grace and her children, Alexander realized something that should have terrified him but instead felt right. He wasn't walking away from this. Not now, not when they needed help. He'd come to the countryside to escape his life. Instead, he'd found a reason to fight. Alexander ended the call and stood frozen, watching Grace help her children out of the creek. A private investigator asking questions. Someone looking for a woman and 3 kids. His mind raced through possibilities, each one darker than the last. Grace's ex-husband, Austin. The violent, controlling man she'd been running from for 3 years. He'd found them, or he was close. Alexander's hands clenched into fists as he walked back toward the family, his expression carefully neutral. He couldn't let Grace see his fear, not yet. Not until he knew more. But as Zoe ran up to him holding a frog and declaring, "Look, I named him Mr. Hoppy." Alexander made a decision that went against every logical business instinct he'd ever developed. He was going to protect these people, no matter what it cost him. Mr. Hayes? Grace's voice cut through his thoughts. She was studying his face with sharp eyes. Everything okay? You look like you just got terrible news. Alexander forced a smile. Just work problems. Nothing I can't handle. But Grace wasn't fooled. She could read people, probably a survival skill, from years with an abusive husband. Kids, go inside and change into dry clothes. I'll make lunch in a minute. Once the children were out of earshot, she turned to Alexander with crossed arms. What's really wrong? I need to ask you something, Alexander said, keeping his voice low and calm. When was the last time you heard from your ex-husband? Grace's face went pale. Why? What happened? Just answer the question, please. 3 years ago, the day I left, he called my sister's phone screaming that he'd find me, that I'd be sorry, that I couldn't hide forever. But then nothing. Complete silence. My lawyer said he'd been arrested for assault, got into a bar fight 6 months after I left, did some jail time. I thought maybe he'd moved on, found someone else to control. Did he have money? Resources? No. Austin worked construction when he felt like it. Spent most of our money on beer and gambling. Why are you asking me this? Alexander debated how much to tell her. He didn't want to scare her unnecessarily, but she deserved to know. Someone's been asking questions about this property. A private investigator came to my office in Manhattan yesterday, looking for information about a woman and 3 children. Grace's legs seemed to give out. She sat down hard on the grass, her face in her hands. He found us. Oh God, he found us. We don't know that for certain, Alexander said, sitting beside her. It could be my Uncle Michael, trying to figure out if I've discovered his scam. Or it could be completely unrelated. You don't believe that? No, Alexander admitted. I don't. Grace looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. I can't run again. The kids are settled here. Brandon finally has friends. Lily's doing well in school. Zoe doesn't have nightmares anymore. I can't uproot them again, can't keep moving, every time Austin gets close. Then we don't run, Alexander said firmly. We stay. And we make sure he can't get to you. How? You're a tech billionaire, not a bodyguard. And I have no money for security, no resources to fight him. If Austin wants to find us, he will. Grace, look at me. Alexander waited until she met his eyes. I have more resources than you can imagine. Lawyers, security teams, private investigators of my own. If your ex-husband is looking for you, we'll know. And we'll stop him before he gets anywhere near your children. Why would you do that? You don't know us? This isn't your problem. You're living in my house. That makes it my problem. And more than that, Alexander paused, surprised by his own conviction. I don't walk away when people need help. My grandmother taught me that. She'd have done the same thing. Grace studied his face for a long moment. You really mean that? I really do. Okay, Grace said, wiping her tears. Okay. What do we do? First, I'm calling my head of security. His name is Vincent, and he's ex-FBI. He'll do a threat assessment, figure out who's asking questions and why. Second, we're installing a proper security system on this property. Cameras, alarms, the works. Third, you and I are going to sit down and write out everything you remember about Austin. Where he worked, who his friends were, any family members, habits, anything that might help us track his movements. That's a lot of money, Alexander. Security systems, investigators. I have a lot of money, Alexander interrupted. Let me use it for something that actually matters. Before Grace could respond, Brandon came running out of the house. Mom, the phone's ringing. Should I answer it? Grace and Alexander exchanged alarmed looks. Grace never gave out this number. She used only a cell phone, and only her sister and her boss at the diner had that number. Let me get it, Alexander said, standing quickly. Inside, the old landline on the kitchen wall was ringing. Alexander picked it up. Hello? Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a man's voice, rough and cold. Put Grace on the phone. Alexander's blood turned to ice. Who is this? You know who this is. Now put my wife on the phone before I come get her myself. Grace doesn't want to talk to you, Austin, and she's not your wife anymore. A long, dangerous pause. Who the hell are you? I'm the person standing between you and Grace. And I'm telling you right now, you come near this property, you try to contact her or her children again, and I'll have you arrested for harassment and violation of the restraining order. There is no restraining order, Austin laughed, bitter and cruel. Grace was too scared to file one, always too weak to stand up to me. Then, I'll help her file one today. Along with full documentation of your abuse, your threats, everything. I'm Alexander Hayes, and I have lawyers who will bury you in legal problems if you don't leave this family alone. Alexander Hayes, Austin repeated slowly. The billionaire. I saw the pictures. You've been playing house with my family, haven't you? Probably sleeping with my wife. That's enough, Alexander said, his voice hard as steel. Grace left you because you were abusive. She rebuilt her life. The children are safe and happy. You have no rights here. No claim. Walk away while you still can. Or what? You'll throw money at me until I disappear? I'm not scared of you, rich boy. I know where she is now. I've been watching the house. Saw you and the kids playing in the creek this morning. Cute little family scene. Would be a shame if something happened to ruin it. Alexander's heart stopped. Austin had been watching them. This morning, while they'd been catching frogs. While the children had been vulnerable and exposed, Austin had been in the woods, observing. If you've been watching, then you also saw the security cameras I had installed last night, Alexander bluffed. And the patrol car that drives by every 2 hours. You're already on video, Austin. One step onto this property, and you're going to jail. Silence. Then, Austin's voice, lower and more dangerous. You can't watch them every second, and I'm patient. I waited 3 years. I can wait longer, but Grace is mine. Those kids are mine, and eventually, you'll slip up. The line went dead. Alexander stood gripping the phone, his knuckles white. Grace appeared in the doorway, her face ashen. That was him, wasn't it? Yes. What did he say? Alexander wanted to lie, to protect her from the full horror of the conversation. But Grace deserved the truth. He's been watching the house. He saw us this morning at the creek, and he's threatening to come after you and the kids. Grace's legs buckled. Alexander caught her before she fell, guiding her to a kitchen chair. She was shaking, her breath coming in short gasps. Breathe, Alexander said gently. Slow, deep breaths. You're safe right now. The children are safe. He was watching us, Grace whispered. While we were playing, while the kids were happy, he was out there planning how to hurt us. Which is why we're not waiting anymore. I'm calling Vincent right now, and we're calling the police to file that restraining order. Austin made direct threats. That's enough for legal action. The police won't help, Grace said bitterly. I called them 6 times when we were married. They'd come, take a report, and leave. Austin would wait until they were gone, and make it worse. The system doesn't protect women like me. Then we don't rely on just the system. We use every resource we have. Alexander pulled out his phone and dialed. Vincent, I need you at the Riverside property immediately, and bring a full security team. While Alexander gave instructions, Grace sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. The children's voices drifted down from upstairs. They were playing, oblivious to the danger circling their home. After Alexander hung up, Grace looked at him. You should leave. Take your vacation somewhere else. Austin's dangerous, and if you're here when he shows up, I'm not leaving. Alexander, you don't understand what he's capable of. He put me in the hospital twice, broke my arm once, told me if I ever left him, he'd kill me and make sure the kids watched. He means it. He's not bluffing. Neither am I, Alexander said. I'm staying. We're protecting your family. End of discussion. Why? Grace asked desperately. Why do you care so much? You just met us yesterday. This isn't your fight. Alexander pulled out a chair and sat across from her. When I was 12, my mother left my father. He was emotionally abusive, never hit her, but destroyed her with words, with control, with making her feel worthless. My grandmother helped her escape, gave her money, a place to stay, legal support. My father tried to get her back, threatened her, stalked her, made her life hell. But my grandmother stood up to him, got restraining orders, hired security, fought him in court. She saved my mother's life. I didn't know that. Most people don't. My father eventually moved on, remarried, left us alone. But I learned something from watching my grandmother fight for my mother. Some battles are worth fighting even when they're not yours. Especially when they're not yours. Because standing up to bullies, protecting people who can't protect themselves, that's what gives life meaning. Grace's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they weren't tears of fear. Your grandmother sounds like an amazing woman. She was, and she'd have liked you. You're strong, Grace. You got away from him. You built a new life. You're protecting your children. That takes courage most people don't have. I don't feel strong. I feel terrified. Fear and strength aren't opposites. You can be both. Before Grace could respond, Brandon appeared in the kitchen doorway. Mom, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Grace immediately wiped her face and smiled. I'm okay, baby. Just having a grown-up conversation with Mr. Hayes. About what? About how we're going to make the house even safer, Alexander said smoothly. I'm having some friends come install special cameras and alarms, like in spy movies. Brandon's eyes lit up. Really? Can I help? Absolutely. I'll need an assistant security chief. Think you're up for it? Yes. Brandon pumped his fist. Grace gave Alexander a grateful look. He'd just turned a terrifying situation into an adventure for her son. That's what good people did. They protected children's innocence as long as possible. The rest of the day moved quickly. Vincent arrived with 3 security specialists within 2 hours. They swept the property, found evidence of someone camping in the woods, about 200 yards from the house, confirming Austin had been watching, and immediately began installing cameras, motion sensors, and a sophisticated alarm system. The local police came to take Grace's statement and issue an emergency restraining order. The officer was kind but realistic. "Ma'am, this order means he can't legally come near you. But a piece of paper won't physically stop him if he's determined. You need to be careful." "She will be," Alexander said. "We have private security on site now." The officer looked impressed. "Then you're better protected than most. Good luck." By evening, the house had been transformed into a fortress. Cameras covered every angle. Motion sensors lined the perimeter. Vincent had posted 1 guard at the front gate and another patrolling the grounds. Inside, the children thought it was the coolest thing ever. Brandon kept asking Vincent about FBI stories, and Lily wanted to know if they could watch the security cameras like TV. Only Zoe seemed to sense something was wrong. She stayed close to Grace all evening, unusually quiet. At bedtime, she wrapped her small arms around her mother's neck and whispered, "Is the bad man coming back?" Grace's face crumpled, but she held it together. "No, baby. We have friends now who are keeping us safe. Mr. Hayes and his helpers won't let anyone hurt us. Promise?" "Promise." After the children were asleep, Grace found Alexander on the back porch. He was staring into the dark woods, a cup of coffee in his hands. "Thank you," Grace said quietly, "for everything today. The security, the police, protecting the kids from being scared. You didn't have to do any of that." "Yes, I did." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Grace asked, "What happens tomorrow?" "Tomorrow, my investigators start tracking Austin's movements. We find out where he's staying, who he's working with. He must have help if he hired that private investigator. We build a case to have him arrested for stalking and harassment, and we make sure your family is protected every single moment until he's in custody. And if he comes here before you find him?" Alexander turned to face her, his expression serious. "Then Vincent and his team will handle it. And Grace, I need you to understand something. I won't let Austin hurt you or your children. I give you my word. You can't promise that. You don't know what he's like when he's angry. Then he's about to find out what I'm like when I'm protecting people I care about." Grace's breath caught at those words, "people I care about." After knowing each other less than 2 days, Alexander Hayes genuinely cared about her family. It didn't make sense. It was too fast, too much. But looking into his eyes, Grace believed him. "I care about you too," she said softly. "About you staying safe. Promise me you won't do anything stupid or heroic if Austin shows up." "I promise to do whatever's necessary to keep everyone safe, including myself." "That's not the same thing. It's the best I can offer." Grace wanted to argue, but exhaustion was catching up with her. The emotional toll of the day, finding out Austin had found them, the threats, the fear had drained her completely. "You should sleep," Alexander said gently. "Vincent has the night shift covered. Nothing's getting past his team. Will you be okay out here?" "I'm not going anywhere." Grace hesitated, then impulsively hugged him. It was brief, just a moment of connection, but when she pulled back, they both felt the shift between them. Something more than landlord and tenant, more than protector and protected. Something neither was ready to name yet. "Good night, Alexander," Grace said. "Good night, Grace." Grace went inside, leaving Alexander alone with his thoughts and his coffee. He pulled out his phone and called his head investigator. "I need everything on Austin Mitchell. Last known address, employment records, bank accounts, associates, criminal record, and I need to know who hired the private investigator who came to my office. Find the connection. Money's no object." "Understood, sir." "Should I be concerned about your personal safety?" Alexander thought about Austin's threats, about the danger to Grace and the children. "Yes. But I'm more concerned about the family I'm protecting. Make this your top priority." After hanging up, Alexander stayed on the porch until midnight, watching the security monitors Vincent had set up, thinking about how drastically his life had changed in just 48 hours. He'd come here, broken from his divorce, exhausted from his company, searching for meaning. Instead, he'd found a woman and 3 children who needed help. A purpose larger than profits and board meetings. And somewhere in the dark woods beyond the property line, a dangerous man was planning his next move. Alexander wasn't scared. He'd faced hostile takeovers, corporate espionage, ruthless competitors. He'd built an empire from nothing. But this was different. This was personal. And Alexander Hayes protected what was his. Even if he was only beginning to understand that Grace and her children had somehow, impossibly, become exactly that. His. Around 2 a.m., Alexander's phone buzzed. A text from his investigator. Found something. Calling in 5. When the call came, the news was worse than Alexander had feared. Mr. Hayes, Austin Mitchell was released from prison 4 months ago. But that's not the concerning part. He's been working for your uncle, Michael Hayes. They connected inside Michael was serving time for fraud. They've been planning this together. The scam on Grace, the property scheme, finding her location, it's all connected. And sir, there's evidence they're planning something for tomorrow night. Alexander's blood ran cold. His uncle and Grace's abusive ex-husband working together. It wasn't random. It was a coordinated attack. What kind of something? Alexander demanded. We don't have details yet, but there's communication about making the move and getting what's owed. We think they're planning to hit the property soon. Alexander looked toward the house where Grace and her children slept, protected only by security that might not be enough if Michael and Austin were working together with a real plan. The peaceful vacation house had become a battlefield. And tomorrow night, the war would begin. Alexander didn't sleep. He spent the night coordinating with Vincent, reviewing security protocols, and making calls to pull in more resources. By dawn, he doubled the security team and installed additional panic buttons throughout the house. Grace found him in the kitchen at 6 a.m., still on his laptop, his third pot of coffee brewing. She took one look at his face and knew something had changed. Tell me, she said simply, pouring herself coffee. Alexander closed the laptop. There was no point hiding it now. Austin's been working with my uncle Michael. They met in prison. This whole thing, the property scam, finding you, they planned it together. Grace set down her mug with shaking hands. Why? What does your uncle want with me? Revenge against me. Probably. Michael's always blamed me for being cut out of my grandmother's will. He thinks I stole his inheritance. And Austin wants you back. They're using each other to get what they want. What do they want exactly? Money from me. Control over you. My investigators found communication suggesting they're planning something tonight. We don't know exactly what, but we're prepared. Grace laughed bitterly. Prepared for what? Two angry, violent men who have nothing to lose? Alexander, maybe we should just leave. Take the kids somewhere safe while you handle this. Running is exactly what they want, Alexander said firmly. Michael knows I won't let him have this property. Austin knows you'll do anything to protect your kids. They're counting on fear to make us vulnerable. But if we stand our ground with proper security, we have the advantage. Or we have a target on our backs. Grace, look at me. Alexander waited until she met his eyes. I have 12 trained security professionals surrounding this property. Police are on standby. My lawyers are filing criminal charges against both Michael and Austin. We're not helpless here. Then why do I feel so helpless? Before Alexander could answer, Brandon bounded into the kitchen. Mom, Mr. Vincent said I can help monitor the cameras today. Can I? Grace forced a smile. After breakfast and chores, maybe. Awesome. Brandon ran off to wake his sisters. Grace turned back to Alexander. How do I explain to my 7-year-old that his father is trying to hurt us? How do I keep him innocent while preparing him for danger? You don't explain everything. Kids are resilient. They'll follow your lead. If you're calm, they'll be calm. I'm not calm. I'm terrified. Then fake it. I've been faking calm in business meetings for years. You can fake it for your kids for one day. Grace almost smiled. Is that your billionaire wisdom? Fake it until you make it? It's gotten me pretty far. The morning passed in tense normalcy. Grace made breakfast, while Alexander helped Brandon with the security cameras. Lily drew pictures of the house surrounded by good guy robots that protected them. Zoe stayed quiet, her small hand clutching her mother's shirt whenever possible. Around noon, Vincent pulled Alexander aside. Sir, we've spotted movement in the woods. 3 individuals, approximately half a mile out, watching the property with binoculars. Austin and Michael? Can't confirm identity from this distance, but the timing matches the intelligence we received. What's the play? We wait. Let them make the first move. The moment they step onto the property, we have them for trespassing. If they're armed, it becomes a more serious charge. Either way, we're ready. Alexander nodded, then went to find Grace. She was in the living room, reading to Zoe, her voice steady, despite the tension in her shoulders. He waited until she finished the story. Can we talk? Outside? Grace handed Zoe to Lily with instructions to play quietly, then followed Alexander to the porch. Vincent had positioned himself nearby, close enough to intervene if needed, far enough to give them privacy. They're here, Alexander said without preamble, in the woods, watching. Grace's face went white, but she didn't panic. 3 people. We think Austin, Michael, and maybe someone they hired. When will they move? Probably tonight, under cover of darkness. Grace wrapped her arms around herself. My babies are inside, playing, reading, being normal kids. And their father is in the woods, planning to what? Take them? Hurt me? Hurt you? We won't let any of that happen. You keep saying that. But Alexander, you're one person. Austin is relentless. If he wants something, he doesn't stop until he gets it, or someone gets hurt. Usually, someone gets hurt either way. Alexander stepped closer, his voice low and intense. Grace, I need you to trust me. I know you barely know me. I know I'm just some billionaire who walked into your life 2 days ago. But I'm asking you to believe that I won't let them touch you or your children. I have resources Austin can't imagine, security he can't penetrate, money to fight legal battles for years if necessary. He's outmatched, even if he doesn't know it yet. What if you're wrong? What if something goes wrong? And Grace's voice broke. Alexander did something he hadn't planned, something that surprised both of them. He pulled Grace into his arms, holding her while she tried not to cry. She stiffened at first, then relaxed against him, letting someone else be strong for just a moment. Nothing's going wrong, Alexander murmured. I promise you. They stood like that for several heartbeats, neither acknowledging the shift happening between them. Then Grace pulled back, wiping her eyes. I need to be strong for the kids. You are strong. But even strong people need help sometimes. Grace managed a small smile. When this is over, if we survive, remind me to thank you properly. We'll survive. And you can thank me with more of those pancakes. The lightness lasted only a moment before reality crashed back. Vincent's radio crackled. Movement. They're getting closer. 2 men approaching from the north. 1 from the east. Coordinated approach. Alexander's jaw tightened. Here we go. Get the kids to the safe room, Alexander told Grace. Now. Grace didn't argue. She ran inside, calling to the children with forced cheerfulness. Kids, we're going to play a special game. Remember the safe room we talked about? Alexander heard Brandon's excited voice. The secret room? Cool. Within 2 minutes, Grace had all 3 children in the reinforced room. Alexander had Vincent install yesterday, basically a panic room with supplies, communication, equipment, and a reinforced door. Grace hesitated at the threshold. Stay with us, she said to Alexander. Please. I need to be out there. Vincent needs me to. You're not trained for this. You're a businessman. Let the security team handle it. She was right, but Alexander's pride bristled. I can't hide while you and the kids are in danger. You're not hiding. You're protecting us by being smart. Please, Alexander. The fear in her eyes decided it. Alexander stepped into the safe room. Vincent sealed the door from the outside, his voice coming through the intercom. Stay here until I give the all clear. We've got this, sir. The safe room had monitors showing feeds from all the security cameras. Alexander, Grace, and the children watched as 3 figures emerged from the woods. Even on the grainy footage, Alexander recognized his Uncle Michael, older, harder, but definitely him. The larger man beside him had to be Austin, broad-shouldered, moving with aggressive confidence. Brandon pressed against the screen. Is that Daddy? Grace pulled him back. Brandon, honey, that's him. Brandon's voice rose with a mix of fear and confusion. Why is Daddy here? I thought he didn't know where we lived. Lily started crying. Zoe buried her face in Grace's shoulder. The careful normalcy Grace had maintained all day shattered in an instant. Your father made some bad choices, Grace said, her voice shaking. He's not here to visit. He's here to cause trouble. But Mr. Hayes's friends are going to keep us safe. I don't understand, Brandon said, tears now streaming down his face. Why would Daddy want to hurt us? Grace looked at Alexander helplessly. How do you explain domestic violence to a 7-year-old? How do you tell children their father is the monster? Alexander knelt beside Brandon. Sometimes grown-ups get confused about what love means. Your dad thinks love means controlling people, making them do what he wants. But real love means wanting people to be happy, even if that means letting them go. Your mom loves you the right way. She protects you and wants you to be safe and happy. That's real love. And Daddy doesn't love us the right way. I think he loves you in the only way he knows how. But it's not a healthy way. And your mom is brave for keeping you away from that. Brandon processed this, his young mind struggling with complex adult realities. Finally, he nodded. Okay, but Mr. Hayes? Don't let him take us back. Never, Alexander promised. On the monitors, Vincent's team moved into position. The 3 intruders had reached the edge of the property. Austin was gesturing angrily, Michael talking on a phone. The third person, a younger man Alexander didn't recognize, held what looked like bolt cutters. They're going for the fence, Grace whispered. The monitors showed Vincent approaching with 2 security officers, hands visible, weapons holstered but accessible. Audio crackled through the speakers. This is private property, Vincent's voice rang out. You're trespassing. Leave now, or we'll have you arrested. Michael sneered. This is my property, my mother's house. This man, he pointed toward the house, stole it from me. Margaret Hayes left this property to Alexander Hayes in her legal will. You have no claim here. Then I'll take what I'm owed another way. Michael nodded to Austin. Austin stepped forward, his voice carrying menace. I just want my wife and kids. Send them out, and we'll leave peacefully. Grace Mitchell has a restraining order against you, Vincent replied calmly. You're violating it by being here. Last warning, leave or be arrested. Austin laughed. Arrested by who? You? You're not cops. You're just hired security. And there's 3 of us, 3 of you. Even odds. Actually, Vincent said. And 6 more security officers emerged from positions around the property. All armed, all trained. The odds favor us significantly. For the first time, doubt flickered across Austin's face. Michael grabbed his arm, pulling him back. This isn't over, Michael shouted toward the house. You hear me, Alexander? This isn't over. They retreated into the woods, but slowly, looking back, making it clear this was tactical withdrawal, not defeat. Vincent's voice came through the intercom. They're gone for now, but sir, they're not done. That was reconnaissance. They wanted to see our capabilities. Should we come out? Alexander asked. Give us 20 minutes to do a full sweep, make sure they're really gone and didn't leave any surprises. The wait was agonizing. The children had gone quiet, processing what they'd seen. Finally, Grace spoke. I'm sorry, she said to Alexander. I brought this chaos into your life. If I'd known… Stop, Alexander interrupted. You didn't bring chaos. My uncle did. Your ex-husband did. You're just trying to survive, and now I'm helping. Don't apologize for being victimized. But your vacation was always going to be boring anyway, Alexander said with a slight smile. This is much more interesting. Grace laughed, despite everything. You have a weird definition of interesting. Comes with being a billionaire. Normal is boring. Vincent's voice crackled through. All clear. You can come out. But sir, we need to talk about next steps. They'll be back. The family emerged from the safe room, into the late afternoon light. Brandon immediately ran to Vincent. Did you fight them? Did you use cool ninja moves? Vincent smiled despite the tension. No ninja moves today, just good security protocol. While Vincent gave his report to Alexander, Grace took her children outside to the porch, needing air, space, anything to help them process the trauma. Alexander watched them through the window. Grace sat on the steps with Zoe in her lap. Brandon and Lily pressed against her sides. She was talking softly, probably reassuring them, probably lying that everything would be fine. Sir, Vincent's voice brought Alexander back. You're not hearing me. Sorry. What? I said they'll be back tonight. This was just a probe. They'll come with a real plan, probably after dark. We need to decide, do we wait for them here, or do we evacuate the family? What's your professional recommendation? Evacuate. Get Mrs. Mitchell and the kids somewhere safe while we handle the threat. And if we evacuate, What stops Michael and Austin from following? From finding them again? Vincent didn't have a good answer. We stay, Alexander decided. We end this tonight. Michael wants this property fine. Let him come for it. When he does, we'll have law enforcement ready. Clear trespassing, clear threats. Enough to put him away for years. That's a risk, sir. Life is risk, but calculated risk with proper preparation, that's just good strategy. As evening fell, preparations intensified. Vincent called in 4 more officers. The local police agreed to stage units nearby, close enough to respond within 2 minutes. Alexander's lawyers prepared emergency injunctions. Everything was ready. Except Grace. Alexander found her in the kitchen after putting the children to bed. She was gripping a cup of tea so hard her knuckles were white. "They're coming back tonight," she said. "Not a question." "Yes. And you're planning to be out there when they do." "I have to be." "No," Grace said fiercely. "You don't. This is my fight, Alexander. Mine and Austin's. You've done enough. More than enough. But I can't let you risk your life for what?" Alexander challenged. "For you? For your children? For doing what's right?" "Grace, I'm not some naive hero with a death wish. I'm a businessman who's very good at strategy. And the strategy here is overwhelming force and legal precision. We'll win this." "You sound so confident." "Because I am." Grace set down her tea and walked over to him. They were inches apart, close enough to see the fear and gratitude and something else in each other's eyes. "When this is over," Grace said quietly, "when we're safe and Austin's gone and your uncle's in jail, what happens then? What do you want to happen?" "I don't know. 2 days ago, you were just a stranger who owned my house. Now you're the person protecting my family, risking everything for people you barely know." "I don't understand you, Alexander Hayes." "I don't understand myself lately," Alexander admitted. "I came here to escape my life. Instead, I found something worth fighting for." "Me? You? Your children? This?" He gestured around the house. "A family. Purpose. Something bigger than board meetings and profit margins." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Don't make promises you can't keep. Don't make me care about you if—" "I'm coming back," Alexander said firmly. "When this is over, we're going to figure out what this is between us. Deal?" "Deal." They stood there, tension and possibility swirling between them. Then Grace did something brave. She kissed him. Just once. Quick and soft. "A promise. For later." "For luck," she whispered. "I'll take it." Vincent's voice crackled over the radio. "Sir, they're moving. Multiple vehicles approaching on the access road. At least 6 people now. They brought reinforcements." Alexander's blood went cold. 6 people. Michael and Austin had recruited help. "Positions," Vincent ordered his team. Alexander looked at Grace one last time. "Safe room. Now. Don't come out until I come get you. Be careful. Always." Grace ran to gather the children. Alexander headed outside, where Vincent was coordinating the defense. The night was dark, clouds covering the moon. Perfect conditions for an attack. "How long until they're here?" Alexander asked. 3 minutes. "Sir, you should be inside with the family." "I'm staying." "With respect, sir, you're a liability out here. No training, no experience." Headlights appeared at the end of the driveway. Not sneaking this time, just rolling straight up to the house with aggressive confidence. The vehicles stopped 50 feet away. Doors opened. Men got out, Austin, Michael, and 4 others Alexander didn't recognize. They spread out in a semicircle, intimidating through numbers and attitude. Austin stepped forward, his voice carrying across the distance. "Grace, I know you're in there. Send out my kids, or things get ugly." "They're already ugly," Alexander called back, stepping into the light. "And you're trespassing on my property, with clear intent to threaten and harm. Police are en route. You have about 90 seconds to leave before this becomes a criminal matter you can't walk away from." Michael laughed. "Look at you, playing hero. But you're soft, Alexander. Rich and soft. You've never been in a real fight in your life. Neither have you, Uncle Michael, unless you count scamming vulnerable women and stealing from your own mother." "I'm taking what's mine," Michael shouted. "This house, this property, everything she should have left me. She left it to someone who deserved it, someone who didn't steal from her for drug money." Michael's face twisted with rage. He nodded to the men he'd brought. Get them out of that house, whatever it takes. The hired thugs moved forward. Vincent's security team stepped into position, weapons drawn. Don't, Vincent warned. We will defend this property. For 5 endless seconds, both sides faced off. Then sirens split the night. Police cars roared up the driveway, lights flashing, officers pouring out with weapons drawn. Everyone on the ground. Now. Chaos erupted. Austin tried to run. 2 officers tackled him. Michael swung at a cop and got tased. The hired thugs scattered, but were quickly caught. Within minutes, it was over. Austin lay on the ground in handcuffs, screaming Grace's name with such venom that Alexander felt sick. Michael was screaming about lawyers and rights. The thugs just looked resigned, probably not their first arrest. Vincent approached Alexander. It's done, sir. All of them in custody. Multiple charges: trespassing, assault on officers, violation of restraining orders. They won't make bail tonight. Alexander couldn't speak. His hands were shaking, adrenaline, relief, delayed fear all hitting at once. You should sit down, Vincent said, before you fall down. But Alexander stumbled toward the house instead. He needed to tell Grace, needed to see her face when she realized it was really over. He found her in the safe room, holding all 3 children, her face streaked with tears. She looked up when the door opened, saw him standing there, and the question in her eyes was almost painful. They're in custody, Alexander said. All of them. It's over. Grace's face crumpled. She handed the children to each other and stood on shaking legs. Then she crossed to Alexander and fell into his arms, sobbing with 3 years of accumulated fear finally releasing. You're safe, Alexander murmured. You're all safe now. And in that moment, holding this woman he'd known for just 3 days, Alexander realized something that should have terrified him, but instead felt absolutely right. He was falling in love. 3 months had passed since the night Austin and Michael were arrested, but Grace still woke up, sometimes expecting to hear sirens or see headlights in the driveway. This morning was different though. She woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains and the smell of pancakes drifting up from downstairs. Alexander was cooking breakfast again, something he'd been doing every Saturday since deciding his vacation was now permanent. Grace smiled, wrapping herself in a robe and padding downstairs. The house felt different now, not like a hiding place or a temporary shelter, but like home. Real home. She found Alexander at the stove, flour on his expensive shirt, Zoe perched on the counter beside him, narrating his every move. And then you flip it super fast so it doesn't burn, Zoe was saying seriously. Exactly right, Chef Zoe, Alexander replied, flipping a pancake with exaggerated flair. Brandon and Lily were setting the table, arguing good-naturedly about whose turn it was to pick the syrup. Normal. It was so beautifully, impossibly normal. Then Alexander's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his smile faded slightly. I need to take this, he said. Moving toward his office, Grace felt a familiar flutter of anxiety. Work calls still made her nervous reminders that Alexander had another life beyond their little bubble in the countryside. What if he decided to go back to it? Grace tried to focus on breakfast with the kids, but her mind kept drifting to Alexander's closed office door. After 20 minutes, he emerged, his expression unreadable. Kids, finish up and go get dressed, Grace said. We're going to town later for supplies. Once they were alone, Grace turned to Alexander. Bad news? Complicated news, Alexander said, sitting at the kitchen table. That was my board of directors. They want me back in Manhattan. The company's planning a major acquisition, and they need me there for negotiations. Grace's stomach dropped. When? Next week. For at least a month, maybe longer. Oh, Alexander reached for her hand. Grace, I'm not abandoning you. This is just business. I'll come back every weekend. And we can video call every day. It's fine, Grace interrupted, pulling her hand back. This is your real life. We've been living in a bubble here. Eventually, reality had to intrude. This isn't about choosing between my company and you. I can do both. Can you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're a billionaire CEO, and I'm a single mother who makes $11 an hour at a diner. Your world and my world don't exactly overlap. They overlap right here, Alexander said firmly. In this house, with those children, with us. There is no us, Alexander. Not officially. We've been playing house for 3 months, but we haven't talked about what this actually is. Alexander stood up, frustrated. Then, let's talk about it. What do you want this to be? I don't know, Grace's voice rose. I don't know how to do this. You saved my life. You protected my children. I'm grateful, God, I'm so grateful, but I don't know if what I feel is real, or just trauma bonding, or… It's real, Alexander interrupted. What I feel is real. I'm in love with you, Grace. I have been since probably the second day I met you. And I love your children like they're mine. That's real. The question is whether you feel the same way. Grace's eyes filled with tears. Of course I do. But Alexander, love isn't enough. You have $1 billion empire to run. I have 3 kids to raise. How does that work in the real world? We make it work. People do it every day. Not people from our different worlds. Then we build a new world. Grace, I came here broken and empty. My marriage had failed. My life was just work and more work. Then I met you, and everything changed. I remember what matters now. Family, love, being present for the people you care about. You gave me that back. By trapping you in a complicated situation with a mess of legal problems and an abusive ex-husband. By showing me what a real family looks like, what real love looks like. Alexander moved closer. Grace, I don't want to go back to Manhattan and pretend this was just a weird 3-month detour. I want to figure out how to build a life that includes both my work and your family. Our family. Our family, Grace repeated softly. When did it become our? When I realized I can't imagine my life without the 4 of you in it. Before Grace could respond, Brandon burst into the kitchen. Mom, Mr. Hayes, come quick, there's something on the news. They rushed to the living room, where Lily had turned on the TV. A news anchor was speaking over footage of a courthouse. In a stunning development, Michael Hayes has been sentenced to 8 years in prison for fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. His accomplice, Austin Mitchell, received a 12-year sentence for stalking, harassment, assault on police officers, and violation of protective orders. Grace sank onto the couch, her hand over her mouth. 12 years. Austin was gone for 12 years. Her children would be grown by the time he got out. They'd be safe, finally, truly safe. It's really over, she whispered. Alexander sat beside her, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. It's really over. Brandon looked confused. Is this good news? Very good news, Grace said, pulling him close. The bad men who tried to hurt us are going away for a long time. We're safe now. Because Mr. Hayes protected us? Because a lot of people protected us. Mr. Hayes, Vincent and his team, the police, our lawyers. But yes, Mr. Hayes started it all. Brandon studied Alexander seriously. Are you going to keep protecting us, even when you go back to your other job? The question hung in the air. Alexander looked at Grace, then at Brandon. Yes, always. You're my family now. Like a dad? Lily asked softly from the doorway. The question froze everyone. Grace's eyes went wide. Alexander's breath caught. The children waited, hopeful and scared, and wanting something they'd never really had, a father who was safe and present and chose them. Alexander started, but his voice failed. Grace found hers first. Girls, Brandon, go play upstairs for a bit. Mr. Hayes and I need to talk. Once the children were gone, Grace turned to Alexander. You can't just say things like, "You're my family," without thinking about what that means to them. They're starting to see you as a father figure. And when you leave next week, I'll come back. But what if you don't? What if Manhattan reminds you of your real life, and you realize this us was just a temporary escape? My kids can't handle another abandonment, Alexander. They've been through too much. I'm not abandoning anyone. Then what are you doing? Grace challenged. Commuting between 2 lives? Playing CEO in Manhattan during the week, and playing dad here on weekends? That's not fair to anyone, especially not to 3 children who are starting to love you. What do you want me to do? Quit my company? Walk away from everything I built? No. I want you to be honest about what's realistic. You're a billionaire with responsibilities. I'm a woman with 3 kids trying to survive. Maybe we were fooling ourselves thinking this could work. I'm not fooling myself, Alexander said, his voice hard. I know exactly what I want. The question is whether you're brave enough to want it too. Brave enough? I left an abusive marriage with 3 kids and no money. I rebuilt my entire life from nothing. Don't you dare question my courage. Then be courageous enough to let yourself be loved, Alexander shouted, shocking both of them. He never raised his voice. Be brave enough to believe that good things can happen to you, that you deserve more than just surviving, that we could actually build something real together. Grace stood up, tears streaming down her face. And what happens when you wake up one day and realize you gave up your entire life for a woman and 3 kids you barely know? When you resent us for changing everything. I can't risk my children's hearts on a maybe, Alexander. It's not a maybe. It's a certainty. I love you. I love them. That's not going to change whether I'm in Manhattan or here. You don't know that. Yes, I do. They stared at each other, both breathing hard, years of pain and fear and hope colliding in this one moment. Finally, Grace spoke. I need time to think. You should go to Manhattan next week like you planned. Take a month. See how you feel when you're back in your real life. If you still want us after being away, then we'll talk. Grace, please. I need to know this is real. Not just proximity, or hero complex, or gratitude. Real. Alexander wanted to argue, but looking at Grace's face, scared and hopeful, and trying so hard to protect her children, he understood. She'd been burned before. Trusting didn't come easy. Okay, he said finally. 1 month. But Grace, I'm coming back. And when I do, we're having a real conversation about our future. Deal? Deal. The next week passed in awkward tension. Alexander prepared for his return to Manhattan while Grace threw herself into work at the diner and caring for the kids. They were polite, distant, both protecting their hearts. The children sensed something was wrong. Brandon asked repeatedly if Alexander was coming back. Lily drew pictures of their family, always including Alexander. Zoe started having nightmares again. The night before Alexander left, he found Grace on the back porch, where they'd had so many important conversations over the past 3 months. I don't want to leave like this, Alexander said, with things weird between us. It's not weird, it's realistic. Grace, please, don't shut me out because you're scared. I'm not scared, I'm being practical. You're terrified. I can see it. You're waiting for me to leave and never come back, just like every other man in your life. Grace's eyes flashed. That's not fair. Maybe not. But it's true. Alexander sat beside her. My father left when I was young. My ex-wife left during the divorce. I know what abandonment feels like too. The difference is, I'm choosing not to repeat those patterns. I'm choosing to stay, even when it's hard. You're not staying. You're leaving tomorrow. For work, not forever. There's a difference. Is there? Alexander pulled something from his pocket. A small velvet box. Grace's breath caught. I wasn't going to do this yet, Alexander said. I was going to wait until I came back, until I'd proven myself. But maybe you need to know now how serious I am. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, not ostentatious, not a massive diamond, but elegant and beautiful and perfect. I'm not proposing, Alexander said quickly as Grace's eyes went wide. Not officially. Not until you're ready. But I want you to have this as a promise. I'm coming back. We're going to build a life together. You, me, and 3 kids who deserve a real family. This ring is my commitment to that future. Alexander, I can't. You don't have to wear it. Just keep it. And when I come back, when you've had time to think and realize I mean every word I'm saying, then we'll talk about making this official. Grace took the box with shaking hands. What if you change your mind? I won't. What if I'm not enough? What if? Alexander kissed her. Not tentatively like before, but deeply, thoroughly, with 3 months of built-up emotion. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. You're enough, Alexander said firmly. More than enough, you're everything. The next morning, Alexander's car was packed and ready. The children clung to him, making him promise to call every day. Grace stood back, arms wrapped around herself, watching this man who'd become so essential to their lives, prepare to leave. 1 month, Alexander said, looking directly at Grace. Then I'm back. And Grace? I'm already counting the days. He drove away, and Grace watched until his car disappeared. Then she went inside, sat at the kitchen table, and opened the ring box again. It was real. He was real. The question was whether she was brave enough to believe it. The first week was hard. Alexander called every night, video chatting with the kids, telling them about Manhattan, about his meetings, about how much he missed them. The children loved it. Grace found it bittersweet proof he cared, but also a reminder of the distance between them. The second week, something shifted. Alexander started talking about changes he was making at his company, promoting people to handle day-to-day operations, restructuring so he could work remotely more often, building a life that could accommodate both his business and his family. His family. He kept saying it like it was decided, like they were already his. By the third week, Grace admitted to herself what she'd known all along. She loved him, completely, terrifyingly, real love. Not gratitude or hero worship, but actual love for the man who made terrible pancakes, and listened to Brandon's endless questions, and braided Lily's hair wrong, but with such earnest concentration that it didn't matter. The fourth week, Grace made a decision. She called Alexander's assistant and got his schedule, found out when he'd be free. Then she did something crazy. She drove to Manhattan with all 3 kids, showed up at his office building, and told the security guard she needed to see Alexander Hayes immediately. "Do you have an appointment?" the guard asked skeptically. "No, but tell him Grace Mitchell is here. He'll see me." 10 minutes later, the elevator doors opened, and Alexander stepped out. He stopped dead when he saw them. Grace in her best dress, the kids in their nice clothes, all 4 of them standing in his corporate lobby, looking completely out of place and perfect. "Grace, what are you?" "I'm brave enough," Grace interrupted. "That's what you asked me. If I was brave enough, I am. I'm brave enough to let myself be loved. To build something real with you. To believe that good things can happen to me, to us." Alexander crossed the lobby in 5 strides and pulled her into his arms, kissing her in front of his employees, security guards, and anyone else who happened to be watching. When they broke apart, he was grinning. "Does this mean?" "It means I love you. It means I want to figure out how to make this crazy thing work. It means—" Grace pulled out the ring box. "I'm ready to wear this. If you're still offering, are you proposing to me?" Alexander asked, delighted. "Maybe. Is that allowed?" "It's perfect." Alexander took the ring and slid it onto Grace's finger. It fit perfectly. "Grace Mitchell, will you marry me? Will you let me adopt your children? Will you build a completely imperfect, complicated, beautiful life with me?" "Yes," Grace said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes to all of it." The children erupted in cheers. Brandon pumped his fist. Lily clapped. Zoe shouted, "We get to keep Mr. Hayes forever." Everyone in the lobby applauded. Alexander's assistant appeared with champagne. Apparently, she'd been prepared for this possibility. Later, after celebrating with the kids at the fanciest restaurant they'd ever seen, after video calling Grace's sister and mother with the news, after tucking 3 exhausted children into the hotel suite Alexander had booked, Grace and Alexander finally had a moment alone. "I can't believe you drove 4 hours with 3 kids to propose to me in my office lobby," Alexander said, still grinning. "I can't believe you bought me a ring after knowing me 3 months. I bought it after 3 weeks. I've been carrying it around ever since." Grace laughed, then grew serious. "Alexander, this is going to be hard. Blending our lives. Your work, my kids, figuring out logistics. Hard is fine. We'll figure it out together." "You're really going to adopt them? Legally become their father?" "If you'll let me. Brandon, Lily, and Zoe deserve a dad who chooses them every day. I want to be that person." "They're going to drive you crazy. Loud, messy, expensive. I'm a billionaire who's been living alone for too long. I need loud and messy, and expensive is fine when it's Lego sets and dance classes instead of corporate jets." Grace shook her head, amazed. "How did I get so lucky?" "You didn't get lucky. You survived. You fought. You protected your children. You earned this happiness." "Grace." "We earned it," Grace corrected. "Together." 6 months later, they stood in the same small chapel where Grace's mother had married her father decades ago. Grace wore a simple white dress. Alexander wore his best suit. Brandon, Lily, and Zoe stood beside them as the officiant pronounced them husband and wife. When Alexander kissed his bride, 3 children cheered louder than anyone else. The reception was small. Grace's family, a few friends from town, Vincent and his security team, Alexander's assistant, Jessica, who'd become a friend. No corporate partners or society people, just the people who mattered. During the father-daughter dance, Alexander danced with both Lily and Zoe, while Brandon pretended to be too cool, but eventually joined in. Watching her new husband with her children, Grace felt something she'd never thought possible: complete peace. That night, after the celebration ended and the kids were asleep at Grace's mother's house for their first night away, Alexander and Grace returned to their countryside home. Their home, together. "I have a wedding present for you," Alexander said. "We agreed no presents. The wedding was enough." "Too bad. I'm a billionaire. I don't follow rules." He handed her a folder. Inside were legal documents. Grace read through them, her eyes widening. "This is your transferring ownership of the house to me, making it legally mine? Ours. Both our names. But yes, full ownership. No more worrying about leases or scams or anyone taking it away. This is your house, Grace. Your home. Our home. Forever." Grace started crying. Alexander pulled her close. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything. For saving us. For loving us. For being the man I didn't know we needed. Thank you for letting me in. For trusting me. For making me remember what really matters." They stood in the entryway where they'd first met, where Alexander had walked in, expecting an empty house, and found his entire future instead. "Do you ever think about that first day?" Grace asked. "What would have happened if you just called the police and had us removed?" "I think about it all the time. I think about how one choice changed everything. How being kind instead of cruel led to this. To us." "To us," Alexander agreed. 3 months later, the adoption was finalized. Brandon, Lily, and Zoe officially became Brandon, Lily, and Zoe Hayes. The judge smiled as she signed the papers, commenting that she'd never seen children so excited to get a new last name. At the celebration dinner, Brandon stood up with his juice box raised. "I want to make a toast to Dad. Because even though he's not our real dad, he's better. Because he chose us. And choosing is better than just being stuck with people." Everyone laughed, but Alexander's eyes were wet. "Speech, Dad," Lily called out. Alexander stood, clearing his throat. "I'm not good at speeches. I'm better with spreadsheets and business plans, but I'll try. A year ago, I came to a house expecting peace and quiet. Instead, I found chaos and noise, and 3 kids who ask a million questions. I found a woman who showed me what real strength looks like. I found a family. And I found out that the best things in life aren't planned or controlled. They're the messy, unexpected moments that change everything. So here's to messy. Here's to unexpected. Here's to family, the kind you choose, and the kind that chooses you back." "Here, here," everyone cheered. That night, tucking Zoe into bed, she looked up at Alexander sleepily. "Dad?" "Yes. Sweetie? I'm glad you came to our house that day, even though you were surprised." "Me too, Zoe. Me too. Do you think you'll ever leave again, like on another vacation?" "Well, we'll take vacations together as a family. But leave? Never. You're stuck with me now." "Good," Zoe said, her eyes closing. "I like being stuck with you." Alexander kissed her forehead and went to find Grace. She was in their bedroom, looking at a photo from their wedding day, all 5 of them laughing. Grace's veil askew, Alexander with Zoe on his shoulders, Brandon and Lily making silly faces. "We look like a real family," Grace said. "We are a real family. A weird one, though. Billionaire, former abuse survivor, 3 kids who've been through trauma. Not exactly conventional." "Conventional is overrated." Alexander wrapped his arms around her from behind. "I'll take weird and wonderful over conventional any day." Grace leaned back against him. "I love you, Alexander Hayes. I love you, Grace Hayes." Outside, the countryside was quiet and peaceful. Inside, the house that had seen so much pain and fear and drama was now filled with love and laughter and the beautiful chaos of family life. Alexander had come looking for an escape. Instead, he'd found everything he'd been missing. Grace had been running from danger. Instead, she'd found safety and love. And 3 children who'd known only fear and instability had found what every child deserves: a home where they were chosen, protected, and loved unconditionally. It wasn't the story any of them had planned, but it was exactly the story
This is
they
my
all needed.
house. What are you doing here, lady?